So, Joel, the first thing I want to ask you this, just before we get started with the whole list of questions, tell me a little bit about you. For Detroiters who don't know who you are, who are you? Where were you born and raised? And tell me your biggest challenge.
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Came to Detroit at 3 years old. The family, my mother and father were religious people. My mother was a minister. And I started elementary school at Rose Elementary, building still standing on Van Dyke there. And I graduated Cooley High in '69. During my high school years, I worked a lot of jobs, including at Sinai Hospital. I went into training as an OR tech back then, and I worked and graduated Cooley. And then at 20 years old, I opened up my first business, which was on Hartwell and West 7 Mile. And I opened up 2 more stores in Detroit. I held on to those stores for a few years, sold those stores, and went into wholesaling to party stores in Detroit, etc. Then had an opportunity to get a deal with Spartan Chain. I met a purchasing agent. He shared with me, come to my office, and that launched my selling to chain stores. Sold to Spartan Chain, Shoppers World, Kmart's, Winn-Dixie's, Pier 1. A lot of stores started me to traveling the world to buy products to put on the shelves of these large retailers.
Wow, so you've been a businessman your whole life. If you had to tell me one thing, what was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
My biggest challenge, I think, was getting my products into those chain stores. But here again, that's just a short part of my business career. I also became business partners in an energy company, environmental company, and also a building company, Ready Wall, company that was started by Bob Martin. So I have a large background in a variety of businesses and building concepts and how to build quality homes for affordable. I have an expertise in that as well.
Wow. So tell me this, why do you want to be the next mayor of Detroit, and what qualifies you to lead this city, especially right now in this critical time?
I think on top of all of that business, I have 54 years business experience, domestic and international. In the international, I also did 15 trade delegations, and I also was a part of the largest trade delegation that left Michigan, going to the Gulf states when we took GM, Comerica, Wayne County, and eventually the governor and came into to play. But basically, I think that gives me a business spectrum, common sense, to make sure that the people that live in the city of Detroit are inclusive or have the inclusion to everything that's taking place in the city.
What would you say to Detroiters when they say, what's the difference between your administration coming in, if you're elected, and then what Mayor Duggan has done over the last 14 years?
I think what Mayor Duggan has did, it's a tribute to downtown Detroit. However, I think in the process, the residents in the city of Detroit, we haven't prospered. We haven't seen the benefit of it. Many people, Detroit is 43% poverty rate. A lot of people, they don't even have the finance to even go downtown and pay $25, $35, $45 for parking, $200, $300, $400 for tickets. So basically, even though their tax dollars were utilized, I just think the residents of the city of Detroit should be getting something for their tax dollars. And so here again, we look at the condition of our schools, our libraries, and many things that are happening in our community, lack of housing, lack of medical help, mental health issues. We have all types of issues that need to be addressed in the city of Detroit for the people who reside here.
When you talk about housing, because you said you build houses, you build affordable houses, how will you protect longtime residents from being priced out of their homes or being displaced by that development you talk about in downtown Detroit?
Yes, they are. You know, the most important thing is we have to find other areas of revenue for our city treasury. I think the key is we have over 400,000 or 450,000 people that left the city of Detroit, and that definitely hurt the tax base. So what we need to do is find ways to bring in additional revenue, and that's where my expertise will come in, as well as being able to reduce the taxes for existing residents as we expand and bring people out of poverty into the middle class.
Detroiters have seen a lot of corruption damage the city, even recently and even back in the years. What systems will you put in place to ensure transparency and to bring back the public trust?
First and foremost, I will be transparent. First 90 days, I'm calling for a forensic audit because there are hundreds of millions of dollars missing out of Detroit budgets. We see where this is the most important thing as a public servant. We're supposed to protect the people's interests and protect the people's money. So the first thing I would do is call for the forensic audit, and then we'll see how we can make our city departments more efficient and make sure how we can expand those programs that will reflect the quality of life for the community.
How will you ensure your administration will have equity in city contracts, in hiring, and in services, especially for Black and brown communities?
You know, that's the one thing growing up in the Coleman Young Senior administration, he did what he could to bring in inclusion. And I think that's the most important thing. So I would pretty much make sure that 75 to 80% population majority is inclusive into city contracts. I think in order for some of us, for example, we realize that developers, builders, people with skilled trades that live in the city, I would set programs up for them to be able to take advantage of the contracts here in the city for the developments that are taking place in the city. I think a program needs to be set up for them because they lack getting the resources they need to take on the developments. And so what we will do is make sure that they're bonded, make sure that they have financing to get the equipment and finance that first phase of the project so that they could be successful and inclusive, able to sit at the table of prosperity like every other community.
Let's talk about gun violence. How would you address that, especially among young people in the city of Detroit? So many young people are dying.
You know, the city of Detroit is reflective of the state of Michigan. Black population makes up approximately 14% of the population, but yet we're making up 60% of the incarceration rate. So the first thing I would do is address the poverty issue. I think what we have done is allowed the poverty rate to, stay too high in the city of Detroit. And so once we begin to open up the opportunities for the youth, making sure that they get the necessary training. If they can't get it at DPS, I think the city should partner with DPS to assist. You know, you got a $3 billion budget, so okay, we should be able to find something to help that. We should set up a Detroit City Academy so that our young people, if they don't have a diploma, if they don't have an opportunity, then they're going to go to crime. So we should be able to allow them an opportunity to get city jobs as well. Bringing people out from outside the city for these high-paying jobs. I'm not against it 100%, but I do think we ought to find ways to make sure that we're bringing our residents out of poverty into the middle class here in the city of Detroit.
That was my next question. How will you bring jobs to the city and ensure Detroiters, like those young people that you're talking about, will get hired, or other people in the city of Detroit? How will they get those good paying jobs?
Well, first and foremost, as mayor, I will build 25,000 homes in Detroit, which is still just a drop in the bucket when you need about 450,000 people coming back into the city. Ways to make sure that we also, in that process, bring in this opportunity for economic empowerment in the community. We'll bring in shopping malls, supermarkets, etc. We'll create safe zones, which we'll have, where we'll have first responders, police, fire, mental health. We'd like to choose about 7 areas in the city, and we'll set this empowerment zone up so that that community will have a place to shop and it will be a safe area. We'll also look into producing 10,000 city resident jobs. And how we're going to do that, how we're going to uplift the transit system. I think the busing, I know I'm going a little far, but the busing system, you can't have an international city if you don't have decent transit. I want to make sure that we dismantle gentrification, that it never happens and revisits the community again. I think basically you said that there's been a lot of criminal activity at the political apparatus level, and we need to shut that down. Our community have lost hope because when they vote someone else in, they find out they're a corporate asset, and there's nothing wrong with working with the corporations, but when it is to the demise of your own community, I think that's a sad statement.
Okay. Talking about the community, what about developing Black-owned and locally owned businesses across Detroit's neighborhoods? How would you do that on day one?
Well, I may not be able to do it in day one, but what I will be able to do is share with Detroiters that we need our own public bank, that we need to control our own resources, that we need to cut the middle persons out, because most of our banks have participated in redlining, they've participated in withholding business loans. And so what I want to do is to address that first. But in the meantime, we have to look at what resources the city does have. So by calling for this forensic audit and starting to cut out the fat, we got so many problems in Detroit. The Detroit City retirees need to be made whole. We have our young people unemployed. And so basically the entrepreneur spirit in our empowerment zone, when we build that first empowerment zone, safe zone, then we're going to have places where people can rent. New entrepreneurs will be able to come in, affordable rents or leases, so that they can start their business. Someone has to lay a foundation for economic empowerment. If you don't have a foundation for economic empowerment, then the same thing will continue to happen year after year after year, where a lot of people go out, they start a business, but they don't have the resources to maintain that business. And at the same time, we know a new business, if it's successful over 5 years, it's a big employer. The biggest employer is smaller businesses. However, if they don't have the resources, most new businesses go out of business within 5 years.
Let me ask you this. Mayor Duggan has offered up a lot of affordable rents in different apartment buildings and to assure that lower income families in Detroit can get that affordable rent. Has he done enough? Do we have enough, or we need a lot more?
No, he has not done enough. He started a few things. First and foremost, we know generational wealth is tied to home ownership. Detroit was the highest black ownership city in America, and so now we have to look at what has happened to cause that to shrink to the low, count that it is now. So basically, our children are paying high rents, and that's unacceptable. And then when you give these different policies, or, where the rent is a certain rate for a year or 2 years, now those people have to move out. Okay, so that really doesn't help those people. So what we needed to do is to build more single family homes, townhouses, condos, so that people can actually own an interest in where they live. And I think that's the key, because if you just produce people who are trapped in this rental scenario, now they have no out. And so we need to change that. The way we look at things, I don't look at things the way a traditional politician looks at things. I look at things in a holistic and a business way.
Got it. How will you address blight, abandoned properties, and basic city services like trash pickup, street lighting, and road repair in our neighborhoods?
Well, I'll start with the latter first. We see where these roads or streets are being repaired, and 6 months later, 4 months later, they're blocked off again with big potholes and need repair again. So the first thing I would do as mayor is address the street issues that we have. There's a lot of technology available today where we can build our streets and roads to last for 10 years. You have an enzyme treatment, you have fly ash, you have other things that can be put into our roads to make them quality. We all have been affected by potholes. So we definitely need to make sure that whoever gets those contracts are not paid unless they use quality materials on our streets. The game has been played, they get the contract, they want to make maximum profit, so they use inferior materials, and that is what is causing the problem in Detroit and other places. So blight is another issue. Okay, so what we need to do is take a community approach to blight. We need to, all these vacant buildings that are not being utilized, we need to see if there are groups, advocate groups, organizations, people who are really helping to uplift the quality of life in the community. We need to give them that building. We need to assist them in maintaining that building so that they can continue to not be hampered by financial issues. Blight in itself is a terrible thing. I have a lot of people telling me how the city has given them tickets or bothered them about the blight. Well, we know that the large land owners and building owners, they haven't been charged with blight. They were able to keep their property for 10, 20, 30 years, big eyesore, et cetera, in this city. I'm for, across the board, everybody follow the same law. I'm about, if you want tax abatements, you've got to do something for the community. You cannot continue to hurt our schools and libraries with these huge tax abatements, tax capture, tax increment financing. We need to make sure that the taxpayer dollars serve the taxpayers, so they should get something out of it.
What's your message to that single mom on the city's east side trying to keep her kids safe and her lights on? What would you say you're offering to her?
Well, the single mom and single dad that may have children, single parents, period. I know they're having a rough time. So the first thing I would do is make sure that we set up the child care program in the city of Detroit. So mama or daddy can go off to get the necessary training to go into an occupational wage paying job, a career. And so that child care is a big issue. It's very expensive. And we need to make sure that in order to move people out of poverty into the middle class, we're going to have to make some adjustments in how we operate our city, making sure we address the homeless issues as well, and making sure that people are not suffering in our city.
Last couple of questions for you. I want you to address DPSCD. Are our schools doing enough to make sure our kids can read, to make sure our kids are on par and on the right math level when they leave DPSCD schools and head off to college? Or many are dropping out before it's time to go to college. Are we doing enough to educate our kids in Detroit?
No, we're not. This is what we can do. I like to say I have 18 grandchildren live in the city of Detroit. I have 9 children. One of the reasons I'm running for mayor is for our children and our youth. They need to have an opportunity 2, 3, 4 generations down like everyone else, have a good life. So what we'll do is look at the fact that Detroit Public Schools, I think their rating is about 170 in public schools in this country. That's not competing in the 21st century. So then we have to look at our charter schools and see where they are. And I think the charter schools are just maybe a notch or 2 higher than Detroit Public Schools. 2 of my children, one is 17 and the other is 13, is in school here in Detroit. So I have a vested interest to make sure that we're working with Detroit Public Schools, charter schools. We should not just be helping Detroit Public Schools. We should be helping all schools to make sure that our children will qualify for the 21st century, that they can compete.
Final thoughts here. If you could accomplish just one thing in your first year that would define your legacy, what would it be and why?
Uniting the people and making sure that everyone who wants to sit at the table of prosperity has that opportunity. I think serving the people is a beauty. It is something that I've watched all my life. And when I see our leaders turn their backs and stand up proud while they're serving the corporations and the rich at the expense of our community, it hurts me, especially when I stood up to help their campaign.
Anything else you want to add?
I just think right now this is the most important time in the history of Detroit for the residents of Detroit. We're going to need a leader that is brave, courageous, intelligent, knowledgeable, and has wisdom. I think that's what we need when we look at this economy downsizing, when we see jobs disappearing. We understand that the auto plants is the big industry that seeds this whole area. We need a diverse economy in Detroit. The difference between Detroit and Atlanta, Georgia is Atlanta, Georgia has 1,500 international companies. Detroit has 0. Yet Detroit has the best infrastructure for international companies, and Detroit is an international city. So we definitely need to address these issues. The people need to really understand what's happening in Detroit and making sure that if our other industries slow down or go down, that we have some alternatives to build our local economy strong. I've been to about 5 or 6 Detroit City retirees meetings, and I share with them that as many ideas as I could, but I also said, well, you know, somebody needs to step up and help the Detroit City retirees. So what we did, spoke with my team, and we took about the last 4.5, 5 months. We went into doing some research and looking at the situation with the Detroit City retirees, because we found out that they had been paying high rates for insurance. Some as high as health insurance. It's $1,300, $1,400, some of them. And on the low end, of course, that's still, you know, $400 or $500. So what we did was we went to work and we said, okay, let's see what we can do for the Detroit City retirees. So our team researched and we contacted insurance companies. We spoke to CEOs and owners, and we actually went into motion and negotiated a deal for the Detroit City retirees. Now, we pitched it for them. Bill Davis and approximately 25 Detroit City retirees, we pitched the plan. And they all loved the plan. They also found money in their health care benefit package that they did not know they had. The money that they found was anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 of health benefits they did not know they had. So it didn't take a rocket scientist to do it. What it took was someone who cared, that was willing to sacrifice the time and effort to bring about some relief and improve the quality of life for our Detroit City retirees.
For the Detroit City retirees, you said they found $3,000 to $10,000. Where did they find that money?
They found that in different benefit packages.
With the city of Detroit?
With the city of Detroit, yes.
Is that coming to pass, or is this something you're working on right now?
They've already tapped into it. They've already contacted us to let us know how much they found out they had. We're now extending it to all the Detroit City retirees to join this group plan. And so basically, I'm happy that we were able to do it, but this is what happens when you're for the people, when you step up to do something, utilizing whatever tools you do have to find relief, to find opportunity.
And I know that was something that you wanted to add, but a lot of people in the city of Detroit were talking to you about their health plan, the retirees, because a lot of people are worried about Obamacare and losing health care altogether, but a lot of retirees came to you to talk about this?
Absolutely. Well, you know, it started with me going to their meetings and listening to what they needed and understanding how their benefits were taken. And I think it's disgraceful that we would treat any company, and the city of Detroit is a business. It's a business, it's a corporation. And so if you treat your retirees that way, I just don't think that's a good thing to do. I think we send them the wrong message, the wrong values when we don't make people whole when they've lost their benefits.